Welcome everybody to Think You Know Wine. Thank you again for joining us this evening. I'll be your host tonight, Renée Sferrazza, and I am joined by the wonderful critics of Wine-A-Line. Wine-A-Line is a fantastic site that reviews thousands of wines per month, and they are the largest review site in Canada. This evening, I am joined by the amazing Sarah D'Amato.
Hello, hi, I am off mute, right?
Yes, you are.
Standing there for a second.
Thank you for joining
us.
us.
Welcome everyone. It's nice to be back again, and I'm looking forward to the fact that we have 2 out of 3 white wines tonight.
I know you're betting high on that one. We're also joined by the phenomenal John Szabo. Hello, John.
Cheers, happy spring, everyone. Can't believe you're not out gardening, but glad to have you with us anyhow.
Yes, gardening was for earlier in the day. It's wine drinking time now. We also have the epic Michael Godel. Hello, Michael.
Hello, Renee, and hello, everyone. What a gorgeous day. I actually have my window open. Fresh air. Nothing
Living on the edge.
Living high and on the edge.
Amazing. And we also have the fabulous David Lawrason joining us this evening. Hello, David.
Hi there. Good evening, everyone. Cheers and welcome. A special shout out, I saw in the chat, to Gordo, who is one of our mainstays at the National Wine Awards of Canada in the back room and helps us out a lot. And Gordo, we're back on for October this year, National Wine Awards. I'm not sure if it's officially announced, but we're going to give it a go. First week of October in Penticton.
Thank you very much for joining us this evening. Everybody, just a little bit of housekeeping for all of you. If you'd like to see all of our critics all at the same time, just go up to view options at the top and click on gallery view or side-by-side view or speaker view, whichever one you are happiest with. I'll leave you to that decision. We have a poll up right now. And the other thing that I want to let you guys know is that we would really like you not to give anything away to our critics as we have going this evening. And please put any of your questions within the chat. Our critics have an option this evening for every single wine that we have. We have 3 wines that we're doing this evening to score 10 points. But before we get into that, and I'll give the breakdown of the points in just a moment, I want to know what's in our critics' glasses this evening. Sarah, what are you drinking tonight?
Yeah, so I'm drinking Cathalarad. You know, I love my aged whites, and this is a slightly older Rioja from 2015, and it's this super high energy blend of Malvasia and Viura and Chardonnay. It's drinking pretty well right now. It's got some good oak and ripe fruit, but really high racy acids. So it's a nice wine to transition into spring.
I absolutely love that. Thank you. John, what are you drinking this evening?
Renee, I have in my glass an absolutely beautiful sherry. You know me and my sherry. So 2 weeks ago, that was Amontillado, but that was winter. Now it's springtime. So I'm into Manzanilla or Fino style sherry from Sanlúcar. And this is a special one. I don't know if you can read it on the label. It's called En Rama, which means essentially unfiltered or minimally filtered. So it tastes pretty much like it would if we were in the bodega in Sanlúcar, tasting straight out of the barrel.
That's a wonderful memory to keep with you on this sunny day. Thank you so much for sharing, John. Michael, what are you drinking this evening?
So, very spring-like. You can see rosé in my glass. What I have, really special, Rocca di Montegrossi, from the area of my beloved Chianti Classico. This is from Marco Ricasso di Firidolfi. And he is in San Marcellino, in Monti in Chianti, which is in Gaiole in Chianti, and 100% Sangiovese Rosato 2020, fresh off the press. Beautiful stuff. Same vineyards that would make the Chianti Classico and the Gran Selezione Chianti Classico. Younger vines, obviously, but lovely Rosato. Salty, salty, salty.
Thank you so much, Michael. And David, what are you drinking this evening?
My springtime wine, my aperitif wine is almost always Sauvignon Blanc. There's a lot of great ones being made around the world. This particular one is actually from the Okanagan Valley, more specifically the Skaha Bench, which is a new sub-region of the Okanagan, from a little winery called Pentage. They sent a bunch of wines to Wine Line for review this week, and I grabbed this end of the bottle and took it home. It's a really cool little winery. It's small. It's right on the shores of Skaha Lake, on benchlands overlooking the lake. They blasted a cave out of the granite rock to have their wine cellar in. They like to age their wines before they release them, and I'm just finding real elegance and minerality. So I was delighted to see them at our tasting and brought this home.
That sounds absolutely delicious. All right, everyone, we're going to get this evening kicked off. Like I said, our critics can score 10 points every single round. They can score 3 points for the varietal, 2 points for the country, 1 point for the region, 1 for appellation, 2 for vintage, plus or minus a year, and 1 point for price, 15% above and 15% below in a 30% range. We have 3 wines going on this evening. And remember, everybody, if you have any questions, please put them into the question and answer area. And please do not give anything away to our critics. We would love them to work as hard as possible. Critics, I am going to get you guys to open up your bottles, and we're going to be sending you off to the Critics Lounge. There we go. No cheating here. All right, so this is our first wine for tonight. We have the Dog Point Vineyard Sauvignon Blanc, the 2019 vintage. The varietal is Sauvignon Blanc. The country is New Zealand. The region is the South Island. It's from the appellation of Marlborough, vintage 2019, like I said, and the price is $27.95. This wine is sponsored by Noble Estates Wines. Thank you so very much, Noble Estates, for being with us this evening. We're going to bring our critics back into the room and see how they do with this wine. Welcome back, critics. Just remember, you are on mute. John, what a lovely outfit you've created for yourself.
Didn't everyone get the memo? Isn't this Godel night?
Oh,
I'm channeling my inner Godel. I figure that's going to give me an edge tonight. You know, I have
So
to
you're
shake
going
up
to
my
second
strategy
guess
a
your
little,
first option and go with your second option?
and then land on my third.
I'm sorry.
Invariably.
just
Correct
wait till
one.
you see what happens in round 2, John.
Michael's going to flip it this week, I swear. But speaking of Michael, guess what? You are going first. What are your first
well,
thoughts on
what
this
do you know?
wine?
Well, Renee, I'm
Hi.
pretty sure I first impression, I got this one.
Yeah.
There is no wavering from my first impression this time. Not a chance. Pungent, not too much, not too much. So takes me away from certain parts of the world because of its medium pungency, not crazy pungent, but it's a lot of citrus, grapefruit, tart, taut, really, really fine aromatic white wine. So, not at the top of the aromatics, but somewhere 1 or 2 steps below, let's say. Same thing with that pungency. Love it. Delicious wine. Okay, that's all I'm giving away.
Oh, we're being a closed book this evening. I love it. Sarah,
Okay.
what are your first thoughts on wine number 1?
Yeah, so what Michael said, for me, that tell is the grapefruit that I'm smelling and tasting in this wine. It's high acid, it's juicy, it's vibrant, it's a little bit tropical, a little bit floral. It's a really great spring wine. It's something that I think is refreshing and pretty satisfying. So nice wine.
Thank you, Sarah. Over to John, channeling your inner Godel. How are you doing? What are your first thoughts on wine number 1?
Trying to move on to my second impression, but I can't get past the first one because it's pretty intense. Yeah, what can I say? Spring in a glass. This is it's reviving me. It's bringing me back to life here. I feel like I'm waking up from the slumber of winter. It's kind of chalky though. Hey, the question is, from where? Where could this be from? I think we know what it's made from, but where would it be? That gets a little bit more tricky. But I'm gonna ask my thoughts on chalk. That's what I'm gonna do.
Fantastic. David, what are your thoughts on wine number 1?
Well, the where it's from is certainly the question here. I'm just going to describe the wine a little bit and to kind of do a bit of a tasting note on it, because it's actually fairly complex. The nose is quite generous and forward. I got a little touch of SO2, I think, a little bit of sulfur, and but it's got, to me, more tropical fruit. Some passion fruit, papaya, also the grapefruit, nice fresh herbs, mint, tarragon, and on the palate, it's light to medium bodied. There's a little bit of residual sugar. It's slightly sweet. The acid is still good, and a little bit of CO2. And pretty good length.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that wonderful breakdown, David. All right, we are going to go back over to Michael. Michael, what is wine number 1?
Well, again, my first impression is where I'm staying. So this is Sauvignon Blanc. I don't think anybody's going to really argue that. This is Sauvignon Blanc. The question is where from. That chalkiness that John's referring to means that there's probably some kind of calcareous limestone soil that's at the base of this wine. Obviously, that will take me to the Loire Valley in France, first and foremost. There are some other possibilities. I was thinking Niagara, but there's something about Niagara Sauvignon Blanc that's not in this wine for me. It's sort of indescribable, but while I'm getting the chalkiness, this is more of like the coyote from Sancerre. So I'm going to say I got to stick to my first impression. Sauvignon Blanc. This is from France. The question is where in the Loire Valley, to be more specific. I think this is a pretty impressive wine. I think we've gone straight to something impressive here. So I'm going to say Sancerre. I'm going to say 2018. I don't think it's perfectly fresh, but I think it's pretty close. So 2018. And I'm going to say the price is $30.
All right, we're going to go over to Sarah. Sarah, what is wine number one?
Well, Michael may very well be right on this location, and that's what we're trying to narrow in on. And because of that chalkiness, Michael, I think I think you've got a really good chance of getting this right. But I'm going to actually go to Marlborough, New Zealand. So I think it's a Sauvignon Blanc as well, and given those aromatic characters that are so potent, it's hard to think of any other grape variety. But what led me to Marlborough is just this hint of tropical and this hint of sweetness that I find a little bit less in the Loire Valley. And it's just there, like just on the tip there. It's not, it's not forceful, and but it is generous. So there we go. Now, is it 2019 or 2020? Because in the Southern Hemisphere, we can get that. But I think I'm going to go for 2019 Marlborough Sauvignon Blanc, New Zealand, and the price on this $22.
Thank you so much, Sarah. John, we're going over to you. What is wine number one? Thank you for taking off the sunglasses. They were totally distracting.
I want you to see into my eyes when I reveal this wine. I'm going to split the difference between Michael and Sarah. I thought initially New Zealand, but I don't think it's quite pungent enough. And then that chalkiness brought me back to France. Sauvignon Blanc, and with Sauvignon Blanc, of course. I think it's pretty young, 2019. I don't think it's Sancerre. I think it's like a well-made Sauvignon de Teran appellation. So a step below. I find it, a touch sweet and a little bit simple. I don't think it has the drive and depth of what I would expect or hope for in Sancerre and Puy-Fumé. But well-made wine, I'm in the $18 range, Sauvignon de Teran, France, in a New World style, like almost New Zealand-like.
You said $18 range. Do you want it to be like $18, or do you want it to be like $17.95?
No, I'm happy with $18.
You got it. Just had to double check.
No, there's never an $18 one. Okay, $17.95. You talked me into it.
Why? I didn't mean to talk you into anything. All right.
Just being logical, because the LCBO doesn't list things at $18. It's always $95.
Okay, at $29.95.
There you go. It's $29.95. Perfect. There we go. All right, David, over to you. What is wine number one?
Well, it is Sauvignon Blanc. That's no question. So we've got France and New Zealand. I'm going somewhere else, and it's Chile. So Chile, the coastal regions of Chile, the Leda Valley, they're making very, very modern New Zealand-like Sauvignons. Always been a tropicality in them. A little bit lighter bodied, maybe not quite the intensity of a lot of the New Zealand wines, but I just got all the tropicality in here, was taking me definitely to a warmer climate. But having said that, the Leda Valley is not very warm. It's right on the coast, cold Pacific current offshore, to give it some good acidity. And it's a really good wine. I'm going to go 2020. I got a little bit of CO2, I thought, which is indicative of a very young wine. And price, the Chilean Sauvignons, if you're a New Zealand Sauvignon fan, New Zealand won't like me saying this, but you're going to get almost the same quality in your basic Sauvignons from Chile for about $3 or $4 less. So I'm going to go for $16.95.
Fighting words with Chile, but good. I think that's a good answer nonetheless. All right, everybody ready to find out what wine number one is? I got my handy dandy bag here. All right, so wine number one is the Dog Point Vineyard Sauvignon Blanc from New Zealand, from the South Island, from Marlborough, 2019 vintage, price $27.95. So we got a pretty clear winner this round, but I'm going to get our scoring wizard to bring up the scores for this round so we can see how everybody did. All right, so Sarah won this round. She scored 9 points. I think you lost a point only because of the vintage, maybe. I can't remember exactly why. The price, there we go. The price was why you had lost a point there. We have John and Michael in second place together. John clearly channeling your inner Michael work. You guys are now neck and neck, so that's a good point. And we got David bringing up the rear. Thank you, scoring wizards. I'll get you to take that down. All right, critics, what did Sarah, how are you feeling right now? Feeling pretty great?
Well, yes, but this is a tricky wine because I think this wine is made in less of a, full on big pungent aromatic Marlborough style. And in Marlborough itself, it's really changing. I think that people are doing a lot of different things with Sauvignon Blanc, using neutral wood or a little bit of wood or, and maybe harvesting at different times. So there is a divergence of styles right now. And this one certainly has a Loire-esque category, quality. And I like David's choice as well, too, because it's still New World. There's still that New World feel about it. So tricky wine.
Yes, I agree. And actually, we have a question that's come in from the audience as well. And I'm going to throw this one over to John because you had said it before. Where would a wine be that causes it to taste chalky? Can you just actually kind of explain that kind of chalky bit that you can get from a wine and just kind of like where on your palate that would sit so people can kind of understand it a bit as well, John?
Well, listen, I'm channeling Godel, so I really can't answer that. Listen, all right, so when we describe wines, obviously we use language that doesn't always relate to reality. Of course, chalk doesn't have a taste of its own. For me, it's more of a texture. I got this kind of gritty, almost sandy, almost chalky-like texture on the inside of my mouth, side of my tongue, which, I mean, I don't want to get into the whole minerality debate, but, it's an indication that there's a place of interest that the vines are rooted in, I would say. I would put it that way. So yeah, it's not a very distinctive way of describing, and it's certainly not always the correct relation between geology and wine. But we have to get creative when we're describing wines, and we have to imagine certain things in order to arrive at a conclusion. So I just danced around that beautifully, didn't I? I didn't really answer that at all.
I think you did an okay job. Like, I think it's one of those questions in wine that's difficult to answer. Every time anybody in wine talks about minerality, there's a lot of contention into how to talk about this, and chalk falls into minerality. So what can we really do about that? We did have another question come in. It's about CO2, but I think they actually mean SO2. So David, I would love if you can explain what your thought process was in terms of thinking about SO2 in this wine.
Okay, well, I
and also a reminder as to what SO2 is.
Yeah, so it's a sulfur dioxide, which is added using many stages of winemaking and also food processing. It's a naturally mined substance. It's not some bizarre chemical additive. It's a preservative. It keeps wine stable. And there's a style of winemaking now with Sauvignon and Chardonnay where there's very heavy use of sulfur to prevent oxidation. It's called reductive winemaking. And what's really interesting, when this wine was revealed, I said, oh, of course, because Dog Point is one of these producers in New Zealand that is quite prominent with their reductive winemaking. And I didn't get a lot of it here, but I got some. And it kind of mimics minerality in a way. I mean, it is a mineral. Sulfur dioxide is a mined substance. So that's probably where it's coming from in this instance. But so Dog Point is a great producer. They've been one of the most modern sort of avant-garde producers of Sauvignon in New Zealand. And they're trying to make a more restrained, elegant, deep, and complex style, not this big sort of in-your-face thing. And that they're trying to make a more Loire style. So Michael and John went Loire. I completely understand why.
And also, I think that maybe this is turning into a real game now where we're trying to push people in other different directions, which I quite love the competitiveness of it. Michael, I'm going to go to you for our last question. We had a thought come in from one of our audience members asking if you guys got like a tree kind of greeny note in this wine. That is something that can definitely come through on a Sauvignon Blanc. Was that something that really presented to you in the glass as you were tasting the wine, Michael?
Not so much, not this time. And I totally agree that that can happen very often with Sauvignon Blanc, this sort of herbaceousness, which, you know, for depending on who the taster is and how they are feeling, what they're smelling, what they're tasting, it can come across as sort of that, you know, basil, minty tarragon tones. It can come across as evergreen, fir tree, ferns, I mean, whatever you want, however you want to describe it, coniferous, right? I didn't get that so much this time, and I think it was the combination of chalkiness, reductive winemaking, this flintiness, not nearly as flinty as Dog Point's 90. They make a more upscale bottling called 94 that is really mineral and flinty. This is sort of middle of the road in that sense, but there was enough of too much else to me to really capture or to notice the greenness, the verdancy, or the, you know, the evergreen that we're talking about here.
Thank you so much, Michael. Everybody, we are going to be putting up a poll. We want to see who you are going to think is going to win the evening. Critics, at this time, I would also like you to open up your wine number twos, place them in your glass, and we're going to send you off to the Critics Lounge in a moment. For our wonderful person behind the scenes controlling all this, please feel free to do that in whichever order you would like to do it in. All right, so wine number two this evening is the Quails Chardonnay. It's from the 2018 vintage. It's from Canada, British Columbia, from the Okanagan Valley, 2018 vintage. The price is $24.95, and this wine has been sponsored by Quails Winery. Thank you again so much for being a supporter this evening. Welcome back, critics. I'm just going to remind you to come off of mute as we are back in the house. Amazing. So I am going to go over to Sarah first for this round. Sarah, what are your first impressions of wine number two?
Well, you know what? The nose at first was a little bit restrained, and I've had to kind of heat up the bottom of the glass with my hands to get it to open up, and it did quickly. And so, you know, this is a wine that's showing perhaps some moderate to warm climate attributes on the nose. I think I know what the variety is. The palate is actually a bit creamy, and there's definitely some oak influence in this wine. It's quite rich, and it's got some terrific length to it.
Thank you so much, Sarah, for those wonderful starting off notes. John, I'm going to go to you next. What are your first impressions on wine number two?
Well, Renee, I smell sunshine. I smell palm trees. I smell affluence. This is a warm climate wine from a moderately aromatic variety, probably not very aromatic. It's more of a wine of technique and climate in this case, a little bit of warmth on the palate. That's why I'm tasting sunshine. And the wood is certainly present, although not egregiously so. You know, first whiff off the nose, I thought, okay, this is a little smoky, probably going to be a little over oaked on the palate, but it's not. In the end, there's just a little bit of that creaminess Sarah was talking about, leaves contact, and also a little caramel, fresh coffee ground that for me looks and smells and tastes like the inside of a toasted barrel, but nicely integrated into the whole.
Thank you very much, John, for that wonderful breakdown of the wine. I'm going to go over to David. David, what are your first impressions of wine number two?
First impression is I really like this wine. I think it's a very sophisticated wine. It's got lots going on. It's keeping my interest all the way through. And it's kind of some interesting opposites going on here. One is there is a fair bit of oak, but there's also lovely fruit. And I think they've done a great job of balancing the fruit and oak. As Sarah said, it's got this creamy feel. It's got texture, it's got body, but it's also got some tenderness to it. You know, there's some nice acid in the background. So it's not a big overblown wine. They've done a really good job on the balance. It's complex, and the length is excellent.
Thank you, David. You did a wonderful job of painting a picture with that. And we're going over to Michael. Michael, what are your first thoughts on wine number two?
So, Renee, I get a little bit of herbaceousness on this wine. A little bit, because the other things I'm nosing and tasting are not getting in the way. So there is some kind of herbal quality to it. But that said, on the nose, I did not find it oaky on the nose. I did not get a lot of batonnage, leaf stirring. It's kind of middle of the road in that sense. But yes, when you get to the palate, as John said, you get this kind of white caramel kind of creaminess to it. There's no doubt about it, but it's also a touch flinty, a touch smoky, touch herbal. So because I'm getting all those things, that tells me there's some complexity here. It is a warmish climate wine, but there is some complexity. So I'm thinking, you know, when I get to price point, I'm going to creep up a little bit because there's more going on than just basic, you know what.
Basic winemaking. Yes, of course.
Okay.
All right. We're going back over to Sarah. Sarah, what is wine number 2?
Well, I think this is a Chardonnay, and I think it's from California. And I was trying to decide between Carneros, which is a cooler part of Napa, or Sonoma as an appellation. You know, it's just got this bit of restraint. I think some careful winemaking here, and I think also just slightly more moderate, temperate feel to it. So I think I'm actually going to end up though in Sonoma, California, Chardonnay, and then 2000. Sorry, my gosh, my reminder's going off. So Chardonnay, California, Sonoma, 2019, and I think their price is about $30.
Thank you so very much, Sarah. We're going back over to John. John, what is wine number 2?
Well, now I'm going to seem like a follower because Sarah just stole all of my mojo and my thunder there. But, you know, if it walks and talks like a duck, I guess that's what it is. I was Chardonnay all day, all the way, and I was California. I bounced between a few regions. I think this is coastal. I think there's a coolness with that sunshine. So I was thinking Central Coast, Sonoma Coast, maybe up in Monterey, which is also a little cooler out there, sea influenced. But in the end, I ended up in Sonoma Coast at $29.95. California
Vintage?
Chardonnay 2000 and TikTok 19.
Thank you. Thanks, John. That's great. All right, over to David. David, what is wine number 2?
Okay, well, I'm going to be a little different here. Not on the grape, but it's definitely Chardonnay right from the very first approach to it. And again, really well done in terms of the oak and fruit. Where is a little trickier. You know, it's got the ripeness certainly to be from California or some New World place, but it doesn't, and it's got some creaminess, but there's this tender notion that I'm getting underneath this wine with acidity, a little minerality. But I don't think it could be Burgundy. So actually Macon and Burgundy was my first thought, like a Puy-Fuissé as the appellation. But I've changed my mind on that, and I'm going to go to Niagara because I'm getting a little bit of that bench minerality at the back end of the wine. Here we go with minerality again. So Chardonnay, Niagara, somewhere in the Niagara Escarpment, probably 20-mile bench. It's quite good quality wine. It's, I say, 2018, and it's probably in that $35 range.
Thank you so much, David. And we're going over to Michael. Michael, what is wine number 2?
Well, I don't have a Monty Python reference like John,
darn.
so I'm not going to channel my inner John, but I could say if it tastes like miso, it must be miso. No, sorry. I got a little miso.
You know what? We'll try to make that a thing later, but let's hear your thoughts about the wine.
Maybe not for now. So I got to tell you, my first impression was exactly where John and Sarah went, and that was California, Sonoma Coast, Chardonnay, all those things. And I'm going to change my mind because David said something that triggered something in me, and I'm going to change. I'm going to say Chardonnay because that's what it is, but I'm going to go to France, and I'm going to go to Bourgogne, and I'm going to go to Macon. I don't think I need to be any more specific than that, but it's 2019, and I'm going to say it's $24.
Thank you so much, critics. You guys are always putting yourselves out there for this. So let's get to find out what wine number 2 is. And before we do that, by the way, Sarah, everyone thinks that you're going to win the night. So just to kind of roll with that a little bit. All right.
Or are we talking points on wine score?
Points, hair points, all the things. Anything that somebody can score on this evening, which is clearly the wine. All right. So the wine for this evening is the Quails Gate Chardonnay 2018 vintage. It's from Canada. It's from British Columbia, from the Okanagan Valley. The vintage is 2018, like I said, and the price is $24.95. really very different. I honestly, I was worried for you guys in this one because I was like, oh, this definitely smells like Chard, but I don't know what's going to happen with the place.
Yeah.
But let's bring up our scoring wizards to see how you guys did for this round. Scoring wizards, if you want to share your screen for us, please. There we go. So at this point, we still have Sarah in the lead. Congratulations, Sarah. You did score 4 points for this previous round. Michael and David are now neck and neck. You guys are both at 10. You guys got a lot of the vintage and the pricing correct as well, which is quite nice. And then John, you are sitting at 9, but I'm sure that's going to change. We got one more wine to go, and it's honestly, you guys are pretty close. It's neck and neck. It's anyone's game. So just take these scores down. We have a couple of questions that are coming in from our audience, but critics, are you surprised first off by this location of the wine?
I'm not. No. I mean, I was at least in Canada, which is a good thing. But normally with BC wines, I find them a bit sort of bigger and sort of riper and bolder than Niagara wines. And I contemplated BC for a minute and I said, no, it doesn't feel like BC to me. But it's a really good wine, actually.
Anybody flat out surprised? I'll take that as a no.
I thought, it does have, I'm Pacific feel to it, and now that I hear what it is, it makes perfect sense to me. And it does have some nice restraint to it and an elegance, but it does have this new world impression that it gives. And but really nice wine, very meshed, all of those flavors. And I was really close to saying 2018, and I should have, because this does taste like a 2018. It really feels like it's come together just a little bit more.
Thank you. All right, so we had to have some questions that are coming in from the audience. Somebody, I think it was John, actually referred to saying that the wine had good length. What do you mean by length is the question that's on the table.
Length refers to, very simply, how long the flavor lasts on your palate. So when you take a sip, we usually spit, but if you're drinking and you swallow, you'll notice that some wines, you can still taste them seconds, sometimes even minutes later. And that's always, for me, a very good sign of quality. That's one of the things that you can't really fake with winemaking techniques, with anything other than careful farming, low yields, and a good site, in a good vintage. So for me, that's maybe the number one thing when it comes to quality. Length, if you have it, it's a sign of high quality.
Can I just add to that to help people understand how to distinguish it?
Yeah, for sure.
So,
can you also roll
length,
into, as you do that, can you also roll into how that might affect price?
Yeah, well, to go to John's, to me, length is the most important arbiter of quality and price. I judge a wine's ultimate quality by the length of finish, because that's all about the growing of the grapes and all the work that went into making those, to getting those grapes ripe and all that, and harvested at low yield. But the way it's on the palate. Yes, but to me, length is how long the memory of the wine is in your head. So we all smell up the front through the nose. We also have a retronasal passage, and we're picking up aromas through this retronasal passage, sending them right back up into our head, right? And to me, that's how you register length. That's how long the wine is in your mind. On your palate, you're still getting sensations of acid, alcohol, all the taste things, but that's not the whole picture. It's actually how long the memory of that wine lasts.
Thank
in
you.
Your head. Look into your head.
Thank you so much, David. That's a really great addition to the answer. And it also answers another question that we had. So we had a question that came in, which was, and I think Sarah, you kind of answered this just a little bit, which is, are BC Chardonnays hard to place? Because you guys did say Sonoma. So was there like maybe a winemaking style? I know Chardonnay is the winemaker's grape. It does change considerably from how it's made. So is there a reasoning why you thought it was Sonoma, or why BC was difficult to place? Is it in one camp or the other?
Yeah, so, this is, the Okanagan, for example, is not exactly a coastal area. It's actually protected, and it's quite dry. Depending on if in the south, at least, and depending on if you're in the north or the south, there's a vastly different climate and styles of wines that are produced within BC. And that's important to remember. There are great aromatic lighter whites that are produced in the north. And when you get into the southern Okanagan, you have desert-like conditions. So I in a way, yes, but there is something that's telling about BC in this wine. I think that it had some generous fruit, but it also showed some restraint and some balance. And this is a Chardonnay that's not atypical to find in BC. They can do Chardonnay, but Chardonnay in general is really hard to place because people make Chardonnay in so many different styles all over the world. You know, you can grow Chardonnay almost anywhere. You can grow it in cool climates. You can grow it in warm climates. You can grow it in moderate climates. And that's almost the best you can do is place it into a climate. But where it's from, well, you know, winemakers also use a lot of tools to produce Chardonnay, right? So it's a wine, as John mentioned earlier, that there's a lot of technique involved. So that can really throw you off the course as to where its origins may lie.
It's very true.
Renee, if I could add.
Yes, of course. And then I have a question for you too.
Okay, so just so we know that Quailsgate also makes some incredibly high-end Chardonnays. They make Stewart Family Reserve and the Rosemary's Block. And I know David has referred to their winemaking style as very Burgundian. So, you know, it's not surprising that there's this, you know, mixing, this Venn diagram of Bourgogne and BC, and that we can get a little duped or a little tricked because that's how good the winemaking is, right? And so at $25, they're going to make a Chardonnay in a similar style to their $55 and $60 Chardonnays. Of course, it's not the same specific pinpointed blocks of fruit, but still, you know, quality is going to be there.
Thank you. And that also answers the question that we had about why it's difficult to place the minerality, especially because Chardonnay is such a winemaking forward grape. And the question that I have for you, David, and then is that we've heard people say restraint in this wine. Like, what does that mean in terms of this wine? Like, why does the wine feel restrained?
Well, it usually means when you're speaking about the nose, it means that the nose is reserved. The
I said David instead of Michael, but we go right ahead. I still have a question for Michael after. I just realized that. Sorry, continue, David.
I don't know. Restraint to me is a very positive thing, right? It's like elegance. It's and to me, it's mostly textural. When the balance of the wine is really good and there's just the right proportions of acidity, moderate alcohol, the whole thing, it might have a lot of flavor, but it's texturally restrained and linear and elegant. So that's what it means to me.
Thank you. And it sounds like Quailsgate has really picked up their game recently. As far, we have one person comment saying that they've only tried their entry-level wine. So continue trying the other ones. And we're going to go over to Michael. Michael, what would you pair with this wine? And then we're going to move on to wine number 3.
Oh, wonderful question. So I'm going to pair it with what I've got in the oven as we speak, which is some really mildly rubbed pieces of chicken, wings, thighs. I got all the pieces. I've broken up a couple of chickens and I've got them roasting in the oven. I've got potatoes sliced thin sitting below them. So I've got them on a rack. The potatoes are collecting all those juices. And with all the bones that I pulled away, I've got a stock going. And I'm going to have a little soup made from that as well. So to me, that's this style of Chardonnay perfection. Roast chicken.
Awesome. That sounds delicious. All right.
Come over.
Yeah, can we all come over for dinner?
Gonna be ready at 6:15.
Amazing.
Okay. I'll be there. Right. Call Uber. Uber Eats.
Perfect. So, critics, I'm going to get you guys to open your bottle number 3, your wine number 3 for this evening, and pour it into your glasses. Thank you so much, everybody, with our little vials of mystery that we have going on here. And we are going to send you off to the Critics Lounge. All right. So for wine number 3, we are going into a different place again. So we have the Marques de Teran, the Rioja Reserva. It's the 2012 vintage. The grape varietal is Tempranillo. The country is Spain. The region is Rioja. Other info that they can score points for is if they call it a Reserva. And like I said, it's the 2012 vintage. The price is $28.95. And our sponsor for this wine is United Stars. Thank you so much for supporting us this evening. We're going to get our critics to come back into the room. And I know that I see some questions that are coming up, but I try to answer them as quickly as possible. And we will have one more poll coming up at the end of the evening. So you guys have to stick around and be with us. Welcome back, critics. Just a reminder that you guys are on mute as you come back. So if you can please unmute yourselves. Awesome. All right, let's see who looks the most confident that I should start with first. You know what, Michael, you're staring directly at me but you've already gone first once, so I can't use you. We're gonna go to John first.
I would have happily done it.
I know, but I try to make it equal. I try to be fair. This is as fair as I can.
Thank you for thinking of us.
No problem. John, what are your first thoughts on wine number 3?
Well, for starters, I'm back to myself. Channeling my Godel wasn't working for me because there is only one Michael Godel. So I'm just going to try and be me for a change because everyone else is taken. And
you've already been Sarah. Now you've been Michael. So why not stick with yourself? Maybe next week you could be David.
Sooner or later, it's going to come together for me. Plus, somebody said I was having a good hair day, and those have been so rare in the last year that I'm just going to run with it because I don't know, maybe the hat kind of ruined that moment for me.
No, all right, still looking good. What's your thoughts on the wines?
The wine. Back to the wine. Pretty resinous off the top, a little smoky. I picked up a note of creosote, and if you don't know what that is, neither did I. My first wine teacher, Jacques Marie, the legendary Jacques Marie, was always talking about creosote. So of course I looked it up. It's the residue in your fireplace, that black residue, that sort of cold ash, cold smoke, which for me means barrel in the case of wine here. And then I was a little surprised. I've only tasted it once. I need to get back in there, but it was a lot more gritty and grippy than I expected it to be. I thought it was going to be a little more lush, a little softer on the palate. So I'm definitely in an old world style of wine with that higher acid and more gritty, grippy tannin, and a range of fruit that actually is pretty broad. It spans from pretty tart red into pretty ripe, plummy sort of fruit. A couple of varieties do that. And I'm still working out a few of the minor details, but important ones.
That's okay. You still have time. We're going to go over to David. David, what are your first thoughts on wine number 3?
Well, it's pretty good wine. It's complex. It's pretty young. We haven't talked much about age yet because tasting white wines, but I would actually age this wine another 2 or 3 years. The tannins are quite sort of crusty and firm and a little bit green on them. It's medium bodied. It's quite complex, actually. I noted lots of wood, as John did, sort of that resonated character, but I like the fruit underneath as well. It's quite ripe fruit, but there are also green characteristics or herbs and those kinds of things. So it's still confusing me, and I'm glad I've got a little more time to think about it, but I like the wine.
Fantastic. Now we're going to go over to Michael. Michael, what are your first thoughts on wine number 3?
So my first thought is that there's just this lovely brazen volatility about it, which takes me to the old world as John did, but I'm not so sure that I'm staying there. There's just a brazen nakedness to this wine. It is letting itself be heard, and it's out there. It's not that full bodied though. It's really not. It's not fully transparent either. It's not this light nothingness. It's got substance to it, but it's not full bodied. So I think it might be an interesting grape variety that we don't often see. I don't think it's something really obvious necessarily, but I love this wine. I do. I'm really intrigued by it.
I am glad that you love it. All right, we're going to go over to Sarah. Sarah, what are your first thoughts on wine number 3?
This wine is taking me for a wild ride. I've bounced back between Portugal and Italy and Spain and France and all over the New World. So this is really curious. What I do think, and just to echo Michael's sentiment, that there is something very expressive about this wine. I don't think it's trying to hide anything through winemaking. So this wine is tannic. It definitely has some good tannins, and as David mentioned, it could be because it's youthful. It could be because it's a tannic variety, just kind of holding on just a little bit, and it's got some nice natural acidity too to give it some vibrancy and some balance. It's mouth watering. It's mouth drying. And I love the flavor and character of this wine. So anxious to find out what it is, and have 3 more minutes to come to a conclusion.
Yeah, you're last, so you get the most amount of time. So you're pretty good on that. All right, so let's go back over to John. John, what is wine number 3?
That's a very good question, Renee.
Question I
what
asked
we're trying to work
everybody.
on here. Listen, I'll tell you what. I was bouncing back and forth between Tempranillo and Sangiovese. I was thinking Tempranillo right off the bat, but then I got it on the palate, and those acids and the gritty, sandy dustiness led me to Sangiovese. But in the end, I'm going to go back to Spain. I'm going to stick with Tempranillo. The acids are pretty high here, so I would guess either Ribera del Duero or Rioja in the Alta or Alavesa, so higher elevation, cooler climate. But in the end, I'm going to go with Ribera del Duero, Tempranillo, 2018, so probably crianza level, technically speaking. And I mean, terrific values coming out of Spain right now. I think you could probably get into this for about 25.95 and be very happy, because I mean, if you've got it in your glass, let it sit there for a bit, swirl it around, work it, let it warm up. Mine's a little bit still chilled. I took it out of the cellar too late, but it's really starting to evolve on the palate, and it's really quite succulent, and I'm enjoying the wine.
Thanks, John. I also like how you started to use the 95. I'm glad I was able to help. We're going to go over to David. David, what is wine number 3?
Okay, well, that's again, this wine had me bouncing, but I'm going to go with my first impression. My first impression was Italy. I also thought of Bordeaux, right bank Bordeaux. So the interesting thing here, because I want to sort of take you through the process, is that there's good sort of berry fruit, quite ripe. There's the herbal characteristics. And so I went to Bordeaux because I thought maybe there's a lot of Cabernet Franc in this wine. But it just had the sort of a lively, acid, juicy feel of Italy to me. And then I said, okay, well, Sangiovese is an obvious guess, but the acidity also led me to Barbera in Piemonte. But Barbera doesn't usually have this much tannin, so I went back to Tuscany. So I went all around Europe, but I ended up coming back to my first guess. So I'm going to say Sangiovese based. I think there's some Merlot in it as well, which they're allowed to do up to about 10% or 20%. Chianti Classico Reserva, may not be Reserva, but the amount of wood in there sort of led me to Reserva. I'm going to go 2017 vintage, and I'm going to go to about 28.95.
And you're calling it a Chianti Classico Reserva or Chianti Classico?
Do I have to make the choice?
Well,
yeah. I'll go Reserva. It crossed my mind because of the wood treatment.
Okay, yeah. Cool. Just wanted to check. I'm trying to get you guys every point I can. Who knows? Who knows what happens with the boring wizards? They're not on my side. All right, Michael, where are you with wine number 3? What is wine number 3?
I'm going to tell you, I do not have Chianti Classico swirling around in my brain. And the reason I don't is that I find the level of volatility in this rare in Chianti Classico. It definitely happens. So it could be, but my first impression really, to be honest with you, was a Bordeaux blend from South Africa. But I think there's a little bit more age on this, and I do think it's old world. And so I think John has the right idea. I am going with Spain, Rioja, Tempranillo. I think it is at Reserva level. I think it's got a few years, so I think it's 2015, and I will say it's $26.
Thank you so very much, Michael. And Sarah, you've been around the world with this.
Yes, okay.
Cheapest flight bill you've ever had. She's the Flash. She stayed still the whole time. All right. So what is wine number 3?
Okay. You know what? I had this like really funny brewing impression that this might be a Baga from Portugal. But then I changed my mind on that. But it was really because of the tannins and the acids in this particular wine, and but I strayed away from the interior and from Bairrada, and I actually ended up in Italy on this one. I think all of you gentlemen have really nailed a possible location here, but I think it might be from Piedmont. You know what it was? It was the slight hint of dried floral. It was a little bit of that volatility that you mentioned. It was the plumminess and the tannins and the acid. So I thought it might be a Langhe Rosso from the Piedmont region. And I think it's got a little bit of age 2016 maybe. I think that the complexity of this should require a higher price point. I mean, I think we should be paying somewhere at least $35 for this wine. So I'm there. Italy, Langhe Rosso, 2016, and the price point is $35.
Thank you so very much, Sarah. All right, let's find out what this wine number 3 is that's given our critics such a run around the globe. All right, so wine number 3 is the Marques de Teran Rioja Reserva 2012. The grape is Tempranillo. The country is Spain. The region is Rioja. It is a Reserva. It is $28.95. Michael must be feeling pretty good right about now. And we're John too, actually, just not slightly as good as Michael apparently for this one. All right, so we get our scores up. Michael, you have won the day. This is amazing. Congratulations. Congratulations to you.
Thank you, Renee.
Very welcome. John, you are in a very, very close second place. That Ribeira del Duero note on it was really absolutely phenomenal. You got 14 points for the round, followed by Sarah and followed by David this evening. We'll get to take our scores down. Thank you so much, critics. You guys have done an epically amazing job as always. And we have lots of questions that have come in from the chat. But one of the first questions that's here is why was it so hard to place this wine in particular, now knowing that it is a Rioja? Anybody could take this. Michael.
Sure. So there are three factors at play that make it difficult. Number one is the volatility that I mentioned. So volatile acidity, the level of acetic acid in a wine within reason makes wines sing. Over too much of it and wine will go bad, turn to vinegar, quite quickly. So this it's there, but it's a gaseous thing. It's something you smell. It's not something you taste necessarily. And so it can really distract you. So that's number one. Number two is wood aging, right? Rioja notoriously put your Tempranillo in lots of barrel, French, American oak, whatever combination thereof, and leave it for quite some time. And even then it needs years in bottle to really open up. So again, this will mask a little bit what you get from the wine, but 2012, which obviously fooled us all. But that's Rioja.
Were you surprised by the age?
Yeah,
I was a little surprised. I thought it was a little bit younger. I said 2015. But once you hear the answer to something, you say, oh, of course, sure. It's exactly what I expected.
Amazing. All right, I want to go over to John for this next one because you were the first person to mention it. What does Reserva mean?
Reserva is, in the case of Spain, a technical designation referring to the length of time that a wine is aged before release. And it's usually tied to both barrel aging or wood aging plus time in bottle before release. So in the case of Rioja Reserva, I got to dig into my my archives of technical information, but it's 18 months? No, it's 1 year. No, it's 18 months. 18 months, Michael? 18 months in wood plus 6. It's 3 years total.
Yeah.
So it can't be released until, so it means something official. There are other parts of the world where you see Reserva where it doesn't mean anything. Chile is an example. I mean, there are a couple of minor things. Alsace, you see Reserve, but it's mostly the producer saying, trust me, this is my good stuff. In Spain, in Italy, these are controlled terms.
Thank you so much. I'm going to go over either David or Sarah can take this question. What is volatility and how is it playing out in this wine?
Wow. Sarah, you've got a bit more winemaking background than I do. Why don't you do that, if you don't mind?
Yeah, so volatile.
This is a more difficult question to the many people that have asked this question. This is a more difficult question than you think. Go right ahead, Sarah.
Yeah,
Quite
so
technical.
volatile acidity can come from different things. Oftentimes it comes from the grape during harvest. So for example, if you have, let's say, a hailstorm, or if you harvest just a little too ripe, or just after it rains, the grapes will burst, and volatile, as you'll get that character that forms within the grapes itself. So you will get more of that that aromatic character that Michael mentioned right off the bat. That's quite potent and has a bit of a character. We were talking a little bit about hairspray and nail polish remover and that sort of thing, that acidic character before. But so it's quite a potent character. Now, volatile acidity can add complexity to wine, but in too strong of a dose, it can actually be a fault. And to a lot of people, it's, for some people, even a little bit of volatile acidity is too much, and they think it's a faulted wine, and others can handle a little bit more. So I think your threshold for volatility as a consumer is different, and it might be different from your partner at home. So for those of you who like old world wines in particular, and those wines that have actually had some winemaking, some oxidation, you will get that impression, that age and oxidation, a little bit more of that volatile character in the wine. So, when we're talking about Spanish wines that have very long periods of aging too, you will get in general a little bit more funkiness, a little potentially more volatility. So there are winemaking techniques that will cause more volatility in your wine. There are reasons within the vineyard itself where you will get a volatile character in your wine. So it's a big topic, you're right. I'm going to just leave it at that right now.
Yeah.
If I could just add something though, again, just in terms of helping people recognize it when they encounter it. So definitely aromatically, if you're smelling acetone, if you're smelling yellow rubber ducky, if you're smelling, nail polish remover, as Sarah said, hair perm, any of those sort of acetone things, it's there. On the palate, and this is a little hint to anyone who's reading my reviews, if I say the wine is sour, I'm also referring to some degree of volatile acidity. If I say tart, it's regular tartaric acid, tartaric. If I say sour, I'm getting some volatility in the wine.
Thank you. And David, since you're chatting right now, what would you pair this wine with?
Yeah, sort of not just a regular roast or steak or roast beef. This has got some complexity to it. It doesn't have quite the weight for a heavy stew, but I want sort of a heavily sort of marinated spice roast of some kind, with roasted vegetables, that kind of thing. Lamb actually probably be a good choice.
Be really great with this. And everybody, we are going to put up our last poll of the night. We realize that we have about 400 people watching us this evening and about 500 people that signed on, but we've also realized that the weather is changing. So we're going to put our poll up. We would like to know what would be the best time for you to see us do this show. We might change up the time, so you could always keep it the way that it is. You can also apparently put all of our critics out of their own misery and vote for that too, if you'd like the show to be off the air. Otherwise, you can vote on the other times that are available. And critics, I am going to get you guys to do, while people are voting, we had the question come in multiple times on what wines were you drinking this evening? If you guys all would not mind just putting it in the chat for people what you were drinking in the beginning of the evening, because it sounds like everybody was super curious to know that you were drinking. And yes, all of these are in the EST time zone, everybody. In all caps answer of no, do not cancel this series. All right. Well,
EST. Yeah.
We will take that seriously. All caps answers.
Oh, we were going to get voted off the internet.
They'll get voted off the internet. We broke the internet.
We
broke the internet. We're doing better than Kim K. We're going to break it every week. Thank you, critics, for typing in everything that you guys were drinking this evening. Awesome. And since we didn't have it paired for the night, what would anybody like to pair with the Dog Point Sauvignon Blanc that we had this evening? A pairing for this evening. John, Sarah, you guys have not given a pairing yet this evening?
Oh, this is that's a good question. Actually, I've got some corned beef that I'm working on right now, and a really salty brine. So I'm actually, I don't know if it's going to be ready for tonight, but this is something I think would be great with it because of that tang. It would work really nice with a salty meat, especially because it's quite tannic.
Thank you. All right, we're going to check if we have any other questions. We're going to take down our poll now. Somebody also likes the idea of Friday, so we'll see. Okay, everybody seems to just like it the way that it is. So, but we thank you guys so much for putting in your vote for that. And also, I want to thank our critics for always putting themselves out there this evening. Congratulations again to Michael, who was our winner of the night. And you guys will have to just tune in to next week to see who's going to be our winner on the next 2 weeks from now. Sorry, not this coming Saturday, but the Saturday after that, to see who's going to be the next winner of Think You Know Wine. But thank you, critics, and cheers, everybody. Thank you for joining us.
Cheers. Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bon
Happy to see you as always.